Hello and welcome. My name is Marco D'Assisti, and today I'd like to take you through some of 5 successful strategies for incumbent retailers that I have identified through my past career as an expert in retail. And I want to start today's talk by taking a small step back in time. When I grew up in a city called Oxford in the United Kingdom. Some of you may know it. And the city is known for its bustling town and university and everything around it. And here we see a very illustrative picture of what this high street looked like. And part of growing up was obviously, the retail world and shopping and being a teacher and going around stores. And today I'd like to take some time to just show you some of the standard retailers that I grew up with. And one of them is, for instance, Argos, which is a retailer where you still had a catalog when you went in. You would pick out your individual items and then you could order them through the system. Another example was Tesco's, very known big brand. We used to go there for our grocery shoppings, a weekly family outing every now and then. Big days was when we went to PC World, which was known for its video games and equipment and electronics. I loved it as a child. I remember going through the aisles and picking up individual CDs and video games. Another example was JD Sports, where you would get all your sports equipment when it came to football practice. This was the place to be. They had great number of shoes, footballs, everything that a kid growing up would love. And obviously for big occasions, we had Marks and Spencer's, a great place to go shopping. And last but not least, HMV, where I would get all my CDs, meet up with friends, listen to new albums. You still had those earphones with different CDs you could pick from and listen to the tracks before you buy the individual CDs. And this was basically my small retailing world which I grew up with, which was a very predictable, comfortable world to be in. Retailers would expect the high street to be bustling full, and there was no early signs of e-commerce, but nothing that was disruptive. That's until a new kid on the block came along. And this new kid on the block started in 1995, initially selling books out of a garage. This is what the initial website of Amazon looked like back in the days. And from this small, very simple website in 1995 became what is probably the largest empire of retailing that we know so far in history. And the concept that they did was they tried to capture a whole new value proposition for consumers, which wasn't really paid attention to at that stage. And I think basically if one wishes to understand Amazon, one must look into these individual strategy that lays behind it. This is a very famous picture some of you may know from Jeff Bezos, which he apparently drew on a napkin when it came to explaining what does Amazon do. And if we look at it, it starts off where it says, okay, fundamentally our business model starts with a lower cost structure, which in turn leads to lower prices. Lower prices attract consumers and create a consumer experience. The more consumer experience, the more consumers we have, the more traffic we will have on our site. The more traffic we have on our site, the more people, individuals and private companies will want to sell on our site, which will increase selection, further fueling the customer experience and traffic. Hence, as you can see, it created an ecosystem where one of the main focuses was lower prices and customer experience. And with this concept, Amazon expanded extremely quickly, geographically, in terms of categories, in terms of operations, diversifying into different assets. And today, Amazon has become a serious competitor for most incumbent retailers. And if it hasn't, it will be in the near future. It has one fundamental asset which makes it an uneven playing field. Amazon has ADS. ADS is their data cloud computing arm, which generates enormous amounts of profits. These cash profits are obviously reinvested in other operations such as retail. This gives them the upper hand when compared to a normal high street retailer, which does not have a high-tech financing arm from which it can derive cash flows. And since then, since the start of Amazon, our retailing world looks a lot different than it used to back when I grew up. You have a 2-hour delivery now. That's probably less time than it took me back then to drive into the city and go into the shops and find a parking slot. You can visualize the products that you wish even before you buy them. You can have them visualize them in various places, in your house, in your office, in your garden. And this obviously completely new opportunities that most retailers back in the 90s could not even imagine. We're now able to shop with our phones through social media platforms, a channel which would baffle most individuals back in the 90s, and I can also pay with my phone. We now have robots in stores which somehow try to replace human beings. A little bit less success here, but I'm very sure it's a technology that will gain traction in the next few years. And another technology which I think is also very interesting, you don't even have to try on the clothes anymore before you buy them. You can just stand in front of a mirror and augmented reality will show you how that piece of clothing will fit on you. And with this amount of change and technology coming into the retail world, a lot of existing retailers have struggled to manage with this change. And as we see here, 3 very interesting examples of what these retailers were in the 90s and now struggling to keep up with this change. Marks and Spencer's has just announced a radical plan to cut stores and reduce costs. Some other retailers, like we saw in my first example, PC World, are trying to generate somehow synergies by merging with other group holdings and creating larger retailing groups to save costs. And my beloved CD retailer, HMV, the place to be when it came to music, has now went into administration for the 2nd time in 6 years. And I think this is the main message. Incumbent retailers must accept the fact that regardless how much is invested in e-commerce, you will not be able to compete against Amazon, which has the scale, the cross-funding from operations, which has created the infrastructure to create a very convenient shopping online experience for consumers. Incumbent retailers must understand that in order to fight against Amazon, one must diversify their value proposition. And today I'd like to show you 5 ways in which I think creating a stronger value proposition for consumers have worked out for several retail outlets. The next few steps will be very interactive, a lot of videos. I think it's very important in retail that there is not one fixed solution. Here I'm putting forward 5 potential examples that can increase value proposition over time. If we look at the fundamental retail economics of every single retail, they purchase goods, they market the goods, and finally they sell the goods. Now along the way, obviously one must keep in mind that there is a lot more to it. There is the logistical process, IT processes behind it, store processes, after sales, and so on and so forth. This is just for simplification purposes, just made it a little bit easier here. Obviously along the way one must be aware that I'm trying to sell the goods for a higher price than I have purchased them.